Hey guys, what's going on? I just wanted to do a video that I've been seeing that a lot of people have been doing. This video was originating as an entry to a contest, but I thought it was just important that I really probably should explain my side of kind of the thing that everybody's talking about, which is your history with collecting film or your history with watching movies and kind of that sort of thing, where it all began for you. I would just like to say that, like many people around my age, I actually started off not having any access to home video other than watching things on TV. I was probably around maybe fifth grade or something like that before my family got a VCR. So before then, the history of myself and movies was going to the theaters, and then things took forever to come to TV. So a lot of my history was movie books, children books that had pictures from the movies and things like that. And basically that's where I started, my kind of introduction to collecting movie related things. I had lots of toys and things for the movies I liked, like Star Wars and a lot of things from the 70s and early 80s. And then finally, towards the mid 80s, there, I started to have access to VHS finally, which was, we'd rent a VCR every once in a while. And then it was probably about 1987, something like that, before my family got a VCR. In 1987, we still didn't have cable at that time. And so most of the things I had for my VCR was things that were taped off TV, things that were given to me by a relative that did have cable. So most of my collecting at the beginning was I had a whole drawer full of blank tapes recorded in EP mode so that I could get like 3 movies per tape, just because it cost a lot of money to buy blank tapes for me back then. And I would try my best to just go through the TV guide each week, noting movies I wanted to watch, and then I would try to get blank tapes to my relative and see if they'd tape them for me. And it continued like that for several years, and I would randomly be able to actually buy a movie here and there, things that were kind of cheap or whatnot. And I was probably around 1989 or 1990 before I really remember buying official VHS. And one of the early ones I bought was Major League, the movie. And then I remember buying Labyrinth one year, and just a handful of movies like that. I think around 91, 92, for Christmas, I got the Star Wars collection on VHS, and I got like the first, I think, 5 Star Trek films that were out at that time. I don't think I had the 6th one. The box set I had only maybe had 5. I actually still have that. I should look. It may be all 6. Yeah, it actually did. There it is, right there. That box set right there, I got that about 1992, 91, I think 92, that Christmas. I got that Star Trek box set. And then I started slowly building my VHS collection, official released VHS collection. But what was crazy is around that time I got so heavily into movies that I actually bought a Laserdisc player. And basically I quit buying VHS and I focused on just saving up for special box sets. And the first thing that drew my attention was I went to a Camelot Music. When I was younger, there was a place called Camelot. I guess it would be kind of like what you would think of as, like a movie music media store or whatever. But back then, they had a whole section of Laserdisc. And I had seen that they had The Abyss and the Aliens box set, which both had extended versions of the movies, and that blew me away, and I started saving money immediately. That's what I really, really wanted. And from then on, I got really heavily into special features, which is big now. I don't know if we would know what to do without special features nowadays because it's so common on DVD and Blu-ray, but back then, it was really seldom that you would see a VHS collection that had very many special features. So that's what really grabbed me about Laserdisc early on. I think I got I finally started talking my family into buying me Laserdisc, because at first they wouldn't buy me Laserdisc. I had to buy on my own. I think it's mostly because they didn't really understand Laserdisc, and I was the only person that I knew of that had a Laserdisc player. So my family kind of just felt like they didn't know what they were buying, because by this time most people in my family had a VCR and were into VHS, but Laserdisc was just kind of a strange format, I guess you could say. I think around my senior year was the first time I got a video camera. So then I started getting really big into 8mm. Back then it was high 8. Video 8 was a format that came out, and I remember getting a few of those, some of them which I still have. A few of them have just kind of disappeared. But it was a studio released format that looked like a little bitty tiny VHS tape, and I've shown those in a couple of videos. But I started accumulating lots of electrical equipment, and what I mean by that is I started, for all the formats I had different versions of VCRs and the 8mm VTR, and then I had a Laserdisc player, and then I finally ended up getting a surround sound system that really is what we would think of as just stereo surround. It wasn't during the days that, they had 5.1 or anything like that. And I basically, around that time is when I was wanting to go to film school. And a good friend of mine did go to film school, and he studied film and video. And I did that for a brief amount of time, and I don't know. I just don't know if it wasn't for me, or if it was the college that I was going to at the time that I didn't really get into. But anyway, I didn't decide to stick that out, but I still had lots of equipment that had to do with all those different formats. And from then on, I think I've always embraced multiple formats. To this day, I still have a beta player, even though I didn't get it during the heyday of beta. I got it later, just kind of as an appreciation of something that in my mind was a little bit better than VHS, not necessarily, as many things available or whatever, just kind of a better format as far as the clarity and the signal of the analog video. I think that basically Laserdisc was my major format for collecting movies, basically from about 1992 up until, I would say, about 1996, 97. It was around, I guess it was the summer of 97 that I finally got a DVD player, which back then was really early in the DVD days. It was very expensive. I actually ended up buying a combination player that played Laserdisc and DVDs. It was a Pioneer player. And basically that's where my DVD collecting started. And I bought that at Best Buy way back when. Had that for several years until I went off to college. Took that with me and started getting more into DVDs. DVDs were starting to exponentially come out each year. I remember when I very first bought my DVD player, there was a rack at Best Buy that was really small that had all the DVDs on it, and they were in all different sizes of cases and weird things. It was just really not unified to what we think of now. Some of the companies were using the jewel case, like CDs come in, and then people like Warner's and New Line was using that cardboard snap case, and then others were using like the Keep case, and other ones were using an Amaray case. It was just very odd. Like DVD just didn't seem cohesive. And I remember seeing the sign that Best Buy had up, and it said, and then this is the quote that they used. They said DVD, and they said hundreds of movies available, which I think that's hilarious nowadays, because the thought that there was hundreds of DVDs, I mean, there's tens of thousands, if not more now. But back then, the thought if they could get to 200 movies and claim hundreds of movies and give that impression that DVD was just taking over. And it did eventually, but those were the early days of DVD. I stuck with DVD and kind of got away from Laserdisc, and by the year About 2000, basically laser discs were gone. I think I remember around 99, 2000, some movies that I was going to look at Suncoast that were supposed to come out basically on Laserdisc and DVD around the same time. And at first, DVDs were having trouble getting out, and Laserdisc would come out first. And then right towards the end, it was the opposite. Laserdisc would be supposedly coming out, DVD would come out instead, and Laserdisc would get pushed back. And then next thing you know, there was titles that were supposed to come out that didn't come out. And basically, I think the last big movies that I bought on Laserdisc had to have been around 97, 98. I don't think I bought anything except for used Laserdiscs from about 98 on, because DVD was cheaper and it was superior. It was just it was a no-brainer just to keep going with DVD. And DVD was starting to offer, the better sound, and then, all the special features that Laserdiscs weren't even getting. It was really revolutionary what DVDs did, with the menus being more, I guess you could say, more kind of interactive. Laserdisc had a few features, but DVDs just seemed like it was jumping from a book to a computer, and that's kind of what Laserdisc to DVD felt like to me. DVDs felt like they were really kind of program oriented instead of just some kind of video. I stuck with DVD as my primary collectible type movie basically until, well, a good 10 years. I think it was summer of 2007 when I got my first Blu-ray player, so it'd basically been 10 years since I had got a new format, and that was pretty early for Blu-ray. There was not a lot of Blu-rays out. I mean, probably 100 or so, a couple hundred, about like what DVD was 10 years before, and the Blu-ray players were outrageously expensive. These are during the days when Blu-ray players were not Wi-Fi, all those things now. It was very difficult to update them when you got program updates. I remember I had the top of the line Sony Blu-ray player that was out at that time. It was one of the originals that Sony had produced. And the way that you would update it is you had to download on a computer the program, and you had to burn it onto a CDR, and then you had to put the CDR in and had to load it off of that, and it took forever. I mean, like that whole process between downloading it, burning it, and when it loaded, it took about 30 minutes to update. And I kid you not, that's exactly what it was, about 30 minutes. And it actually crashed that Blu-ray player, and I ended up having to send it back to Sony during one of those updates. And it seemed like Blu-ray technology jumped really quickly during that time. Within a year, there was Blu-ray players that were twice as fast, more features for half the price. That's kind of where I've been. I jumped into HD DVD during the same time as Blu-ray. I bought it at the exact same time. I actually bought an HD DVD player and a Blu-ray player that summer, and the HD DVD player was cheaper, and that's the reason why I decided to buy both, because I thought at the time I was thinking Blu-ray was going to be the way to go because I wanted a PlayStation 3, but HD DVD was kind of like undercutting their cost of the Blu-ray players and offering cheaper players. During that time, there was lots of gimmicks to get you to go either way. If you bought a player, you could pick 3 free movies, that kind of thing. If you bought 5 movies, you could turn these in and they would send you another movie. There was all kinds of gimmicks that actually happened during the early days of DVD. Warner had a thing like that where you send in your proof of purchases and you get a free movie. I actually kind of, during the HD wars, the format wars that they were having, I kind of just walked the line between those two. And to this day, I still kind of like HD DVD. It's not too bad. To me, it's even on their older players, it's got a really smooth startup compared to Blu-ray. And I'm sure it has to do with something with the programming, but there's not as long of a time to upload a movie. I know that a lot of that stuff just has to do with the technical side of it. I to this day still watch HD DVD every once in a while, mostly because it's so cheap to get those movies. If I'm in the mood to watch something, I don't really think it's that great. I just want to watch it. I can get an HD DVD of a lot of those movies for just like $2 or $3, and the DVD would be twice as much, and the Blu-ray would be 4 or 5 times as much. And it's a very, very cheap way of watching something in high definition. Basically, that leads me up to where I am now. But as you can see, I still keep a lot of my VHS. That's a lot of VHS up in there. I've got more VHS in the other room. I've got my Laserdisc in its whole section of like a little cabinet drawer thing. I think it's actually probably a 20 or 30-year-old record holder, but it's perfect for Laserdisc, so I keep them in there. I still have a good chunk of my DVDs, even though I probably sold more than half of them. Switching over to Blu-ray and then just thinning out my collection. I probably will eventually, kind of feel like Blu-ray could completely replace DVD, because it is a format that's so similar that plays in the same player, unlike Laserdisc, or VHS or something like that, where there's a certain nostalgia for the format. I don't get as nostalgic for DVD as I do for the other formats, just because it seems so similar to what we have now with Blu-ray. So I don't know how much of my DVD I will keep. There's definitely some movies I've got that I hold a certain special memory with. I've kind of culled through those, and I will probably eventually, thin out 3/4 of my DVD collection over the years, just working towards replacing them with high definition. That's probably about it. I can't say much more of where I'm at. I think that gets me up until where I am today, and that kind of shows you where I started in movie collecting, which was basically probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 25 years ago I started collecting movies one way or another. And here I am today, still a big movie fan, still holding on to a lot of those old things, and still collecting. If you guys have any questions or anything else that you'd like to ask me about specifically in my collecting, or any questions about a specific format, I'd be glad to answer those in the best way I know how. I'm definitely not an expert on everything, but I can definitely tell you about specific things I own for sure. That's it. I hope this was kind of informative for you guys that might be curious about me personally and my history of collecting movies. And yeah, so I guess I will see you guys again next time. All right, take care. Bye.